My name is Elena Whitmore Hale. I am 35 years old. 4 years ago, on a very quiet night, just before Mother's Day, I realized I had been erased from my family. Not by an argument, not by a declaration, just by a tap of a screen. I disappeared from the family group chat. I became a stranger, in the very place that used to be home. My mother's message to my siblings was short, very clear. My children are all successful, except Elena. She chose a mediocre path. From now on, don't mention her name again. I didn't scream. I didn't make a tearful phone call. I did exactly what she wanted. I disappeared. What my mother didn't know was that 4 years later, I would stand on a large stage before more than 600 people, shaking hands with the governor of Massachusetts. And she sat in the auditorium uninvited, waiting for a moment that would never be hers. But before I tell you what happened that day, stay. If this story resonates with you, listen to the end. Let me go back to the beginning, from the night I lost my family and began building another family, the family I truly deserved. Growing up, the Whitmore family was always seen as the perfect model, a wealthy neighborhood outside Boston, where everything looked like it stepped right out of a glossy advertisement. My mother, Evelyn Whitmore, worked in finance for over 30 years. She retired having achieved what she had pursued her whole life: status, reputation, and a permanent seat at the upscale Arlington Crest Club. The membership fee there was more than my entire year's income. She carries an Hermes bag, drapes a silk scarf like armor, and speaks with the voice of someone who believes money has flowed in their veins for generations, though in truth, not that long. My sister Cassandra is the pride of the family, a successful plastic surgeon, accustomed to the spotlight, fundraising parties, and the admiration paid for with money. My brother, Julian, is a senior lawyer at an international law firm. He drives expensive cars, chooses the most conspicuous parking spots, and walks into every party as if the world is set for him. His wife, Marianne, collects designer bags as a long-term project, waiting list, limited editions, privileged access. And then there's me, Elena, the youngest, the one who never fits into the family picture. I'm a 4th grade teacher at a small public school in rural Vermont. Every day, I drove hundreds of kilometers. My old car creaked every morning. My rented apartment was so small it could fit in my sister's dressing room. But that was never mentioned at brunch at the country club. In my mother's eyes, she only had 2 successful children: a doctor, a lawyer, never 3. What no one in my family ever mentioned was, I used to be an excellent student. I used to have a full scholarship. I used to be on the path they expected of me. Until that summer, I joined a literacy program for underprivileged children. There, I met a boy who had never read a complete page of a book in his life. When he finished his first book, he hugged me tightly. That moment, I knew I couldn't go back. That evening, I called my mother and told her I wasn't going to be a doctor. I wanted to be a teacher. The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long I had to count. Then she said I was throwing my life away. She didn't come to my graduation. She said it clashed with another party. My sister sent me a small check with a wish for a humble career. I withdrew the money. I needed to live, but I never forgot what that gift truly meant. The message behind those words was simple. I had chosen wrong. I had chosen the inferior. And so I no longer belonged to them. I had let them believe that. I didn't choose poverty. I chose the meaning of life. But to my mother, those 2 things were exactly the same. Exclusion doesn't happen in a moment. It doesn't explode. It seeps in slowly, like mold in the corner of a room where no one bothers to wipe it away because they're used to the musty smell. At a year-end gathering, I brought homemade roasted sweet potatoes, Grandma Esther's old recipe, the one my mother used to praise as a family staple. When I entered the dining room, I saw my name, not on the main table. My name was on a small folding table in the corner, a children's table, a table for the grandchildren Victoria and Julian brought along. My mother saw my gaze, adjusted her pearl earrings, and said in a light voice, "The main table is full, darling. You don't mind, do you? You're always so good at taking care of children." I was over 30 then. That Christmas was even worse. I spent weeks knitting my mother a cashmere scarf. The pale gray, she always said, was never out of style. When she opened the gift, she lifted the scarf, smiled politely, and said, "Looks very skillful." Then she turned to Cassandra. She had just given her a Chanel clutch. For the next 20 minutes, the room was filled with compliments about the stitching, the accessories, and the craftsmanship. My scarf was neatly placed in the coat closet. A few months later, I happened to open that closet. The scarf was still in its wrapping paper. The labels I had carefully removed were shoved back in, as if someone had decided this gift never existed. The final blow came on my mother's birthday. I called to ask what time dinner was. She sighed, a very practiced sigh. "Oh, Elena," she said, her voice just the right amount of regret. "The restaurant only has 6 seats left. Your father, Cassandra, Julian, and their family. You understand, right? Family comes first. 6 seats. And somehow, I wasn't worthy to fill one of them. But all of that, the folding table, the forgotten napkin, the crowded dinner, hadn't prepared me for what happened next. The only person in the family who still treated me as if I existed was Lena, my cousin, Aunt Margot's daughter. Lena is almost 10 years younger than me, just graduated from college, and is working her first marketing job at a small company. We've been close since she was little. I used to babysit her, take her to the library, and help her with her homework on days when her parents argued. Lena has always been the kind of person who recognizes when you're hurting, even when you're trying to hide it. The night before Mother's Day, my phone rang very late. Lena's name appeared on the screen. When I answered, her voice trembled. "Elena, I don't know if I should tell you, but you need to know." My stomach tightened. "What's wrong?" "Check WhatsApp, the family group." I opened the app and scrolled down. The Whitmore Family Dinners group, the group my mother created to organize holidays, was no longer there. My name was gone. Lena paused for a second, then continued, her voice choked. "I'm sorry, your mother asked Cassandra to remove you from the group. It happened last week. She said she'd taken screenshots of everything, that she'd send them to me right away." My phone vibrated incessantly. One screenshot, then another. My mother's words were digitally preserved, and something inside me became completely still. "Why are you telling me?" I asked softly. "Because you're family," Lena said. "Even if they decide you don't belong to them anymore." I saved the screenshots to a folder. I named it Evidence. I didn't know when I'd need them, but I knew for sure I couldn't let them disappear. That night, I reread those words dozens of times. It's not that I don't understand. I understand perfectly well. I reread it because a part of me still hoped for a loophole, another interpretation, a context that might lessen the pain. But there was none. The message was from my mother in the family group, a reminder of Mother's Day dinner. "All my children will be there, all my successful children." Then the last line, "Elena has chosen to be a regular teacher. I no longer consider her my daughter. Please don't mention her name tomorrow." Cassandra responded with a heart emoji, just one heart. Julian replied, "Understood, Mom." 2 words, absolute obedience. I sat on my bed in my small studio apartment, my hand gripping my phone. I didn't cry. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call my mother and ask why. But what would that change? She had made her decision and announced it as an internal memo. I stayed up almost until dawn, rereading the timestamps, and realized no one objected. Not my father. Not my aunt. No one at all. Lena was the only one who thought to warn me. When the sun rose, I made my decision too. If my mother wanted me to leave, I would leave. But this time in my own way, and I wouldn't forget. Nor would I erase it. Those screenshots. There are bills in life that you keep forever, not to pay, but to remember how you were charged. That Mother's Day morning, I woke up in silence. No calls. No awkward "I miss you" or "I wish you were here" text messages. Nothing from Cassandra. Nothing from anyone. For the first time in over 30 years, I didn't send flowers to my mother. I didn't call either. I didn't drive hundreds of miles just to sit huddled in a corner of the table while she pretended I didn't exist. I made my own coffee. I graded papers. I walked along the small stream behind the apartment complex and watched the morning light slide across the water. And I thought about my choices. I could have called her, confronted her, asked why. Why she said those things. Why did my being a teacher make me unworthy of her love? I could post those screenshots online, show the whole world the mother who raised a doctor, a lawyer, and a discarded child. I could show up at dinner without an invitation, force them to acknowledge my existence. But then I realized all of that would only make me a beggar, and I was tired of begging. My mother made her choice. She chose status over her daughter. She chose the whispers of women in the club lounge over the man who had loved her for 3 decades. If she wanted me to disappear, I would give it to her. But not because she asked, because I chose. That afternoon, I blocked her number, then Cassandra, then Julian. I deleted Instagram so I wouldn't have to see those carefully staged, magazine-worthy family photos. At the time, I didn't know what my silence would lead to. I didn't know how the next 4 years would change everything. I only knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't beg for love from people who saw me as a stain on their reputation. The world went on. The Whitmore family went on living, as if I never existed. A few months later, Lena called me, not to check in, but to give me an update. "The Thanksgiving photo's been posted," she said. I told her not to send it. I told myself I wouldn't look. I held out for 3 hours. In the photo, my mother sat in the center. On either side were Cassandra and Julian. Their spouses stood right behind them, crystal glasses reflecting the light. A large turkey sat in the middle of the table. The caption read, "Grateful for my wonderful family. Mom, you raised us so well." 3 people, not 4. My chair wasn't even empty. They simply rearranged it, as if the dining table was originally designed for 6, never 8. By Christmas, I stopped tormenting myself with social media. But Lena still called. "Your mother tells everyone you're working for an international nonprofit educational organization," she said. "Very prestigious. Can't come home because you're changing people's lives abroad." I laughed, a dry, bitter laugh in my throat. She made up a different story about me, not because she loved me, but because she couldn't admit that she had disowned her daughter just because she chose to be a teacher. Lena hesitated, then continued. "My mother even told Mrs. Harrington at the club that I was nominated for an international teaching award in Africa. I hadn't left my state in years, and that's when I understood. My mother didn't hate me. She hated what my very existence said about her. So she created a different version of me, a version beautiful enough to brag about. A distant humanitarian hero, unverifiable by anyone. My true self, a 4th grade teacher who taught not far away, was erased. I became a ghost. I met Daniel Moore one early fall, amidst the vibrant orange pumpkins and the laughter of 9-year-olds. His Moore Valley Farms was a familiar sight in the area. Hashtag the rolling hills, the old apple orchards, and the red wooden barn that families flocked to every fall. I was taking my students there on a field trip to sustainable agriculture. Daniel stood beside the tractor when the bus stopped. Tall, broad-shouldered, hands stained with dirt. His eyes were so gentle they made you slow down. He shook my hand and said, "You must be Ms. Hale. My daughter talks about you all the time." His daughter, Maya, was 5 years old. Curly hair, a smile that could melt the hardest of men. I've been tutoring her a few times a week since her mother passed away from a serious illness. I told him that Maya is very smart, curious, and never gives up. Something changed on his face. Gratitude, and a very subtle realization. "She says you're her favorite teacher," he said. Although on paper, I was never her official teacher. A short conversation led to a call. The call led to a coffee date. The coffee date led to a picnic under the old oak tree on the farm. Daniel asked me about my family. I told him the truth. "I don't have one," I said. "Or they decided they don't have me anymore." He didn't ask any further questions. He just handed me a warm slice of apple pie and said, "My mother used to teach me that family isn't always about blood ties. Sometimes it's about the people who show up when everyone else has left." That's when I started to believe him. 2 years flew by like pages being turned. The book that, for the first time in my life, I wrote for myself. We didn't get married at a country club. No 300 guests. No 12-tiered wedding cake. We exchanged vows under an old oak tree, the same place where Daniel and I had our first real conversation. Maya stood beside us in her little bridesmaid dress, surrounded by a few close friends. People who, over time, became family. That same year, I officially adopted Maya. The day I held the paperwork in my hands, she gave me a colored pencil drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright golden sun. Below were the childish scribbles. Mom, Dad, me. I kept that drawing on my desk. On days when the world felt heavy, I took it out just to remember what truly mattered. I completed my master's degree in educational leadership between day teaching shifts and summer courses. I typed my essay late at night after Maya had gone to sleep. I used my lunch break to study. I wanted to prove that ambition doesn't have to come at the cost of the children I love. When a vice principal position opened at the school, I applied. The board had 3 members. Daniel withdrew from the vote. I was still chosen. I kept everything private. No social media. No press releases. No bragging to the family who had erased me from their lives. Somewhere, my mother still told me I was doing humanitarian work abroad. Somewhere else, Cassandra still posted pictures of family dinners at tables that never had room for me. They had no idea what kind of person I was becoming, and I wasn't ready to tell them yet. Not yet. The call came one weekday afternoon. A formal voice, an introduction from the Northbridge County Department of Education. The board has reviewed my application. I've been selected as County Superintendent of Education. I sat down on the edge of the desk. My legs trembled. A position I applied for almost instinctively, managing 16 schools, over 7,000 students, nearly 400 teachers. We are absolutely certain, the person on the other end of the line said. Your accomplishments speak for themselves. Literacy rates have increased by over 20% in 3 years. Teacher retention rates are the highest in the region. The mentoring program I developed is being implemented statewide. And then a name was mentioned. Dr. Eleanor Hart, the woman who had mentored me from my early years in the classroom, now the State Commissioner of Education. I hadn't spoken to her in months. A few weeks later, the news appeared in the local newspaper. A small headline, a photo taken from the school district's website. I thought my family would never see it. I was wrong. That evening, Lena called me, breathless. I just posted that article in the family chat, she said. I wrote, Isn't this our Elena? My stomach tightened. Has your mother said anything yet? Not yet, Lena replied, then hesitated. But I'm at Aunt Margot's house. Your mother should call Cassandra immediately. Over the phone, Lena heard anger. Not because I got the job, but because she didn't know. Because for the past 4 years, she'd been telling everyone I was overseas. And now, there was proof that I had been here all that time. 3 days later, the email arrived. Subject, from Mom. I almost deleted it without reading it. My dear, the email began. I heard the wonderful news about you. Promotion. I've always known you were capable. No apology. No mention of the 4 years of silence. Not a word about the messages that had shattered me. Just an invitation to lunch. A suggestion of reunion. Mother's Day was approaching. As if I had just been away on a long trip, and now I was being welcomed back. I didn't answer. 2 weeks later, the phone rang from an unknown number. I knew I shouldn't, but I picked up anyway. Elena, this is Cassandra. Her voice was warm, sweet, a voice I hadn't heard in childhood. Mom isn't well, she said. She's asking about you. She really wants to see you. I hung up and called Lena. Is your mom sick? I asked. Lena snorted. She posted a selfie at the spa yesterday. Eucalyptus sauna. The truth sank in very slowly, but very deeply. They didn't contact me because they missed me. They contacted me because I was in the news. If you've ever received calls like that, calls where you hear the hypocrisy in every word, please comment yes. And if you want to know what I did next, stay. Because what happened at the awards ceremony afterward, even I couldn't have predicted. I wish I could say that I'm strong every day, that I never wavered, that I never stayed up in the middle of the night wondering if I was the villain in my own story. But that wasn't true. After the call from Cassandra, doubts began to creep in. At work, everyone congratulated me. The news spread quickly throughout the county. Everyone shook my hand, asked about my plans, expressed their pride. And that's when the hardest questions began to surface in me. That's terrifying, the vice principal said to me one morning. Your parents must be so proud. I bet your mother is bragging to the whole church council. I smiled, nodded, and changed the subject. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table. Daniel was washing dishes. Maya was doing her homework at the counter. The silence was thicker than usual. "I'm very far away," Daniel said without turning around. "Tell me." I pressed my hands to my eyes. "Cassandra called," I said. "She said Mom is asking about you. She said she misses you." I looked at Daniel. What if I'm wrong? What if I've been too tough? She's still my mother, after all. Daniel turned around. "So what are you going to do? Call them back? Have dinner with them? Pretend the past 4 years never happened?" My voice trembled. I just thought, people always forgive family, right? Or am I the one who's the bad one? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He went into his study. He came back a while later carrying a laptop. "I want to show you this," he said. "I've kept it for the right moment." He placed the laptop on the desk. He opened a folder. Inside were things I thought I'd buried. Screenshots of old text messages, emails without apologies, family photos that had been edited to remove me from the frame. "They all have timestamps," Daniel said softly. "Everything Rachel ever forwarded, everything they posted and deleted. I backed it all up, including the metadata." He sat down opposite me. "I knew there would be a day when you'd forget why you left, when you'd start wondering if you were the one at fault." I stared at the screen. Proof of my own life. "You didn't fail," Daniel continued. "You survived. You built a life, not because of them, but without them." He took my hand. "You owe no one forgiveness. You owe yourself the truth." Daniel closed the computer. "Rachel sent something else," he said. "Are you sure you want to see it?" I nodded. A new screenshot appeared. From the family chat group I'd been deleted from years ago. A message from my mother sent yesterday. "Great news. Elena has been honored at the state level. The awards ceremony will be televised live. We'll be there early, seated in the family section, go on stage with the girl for a photo shoot." The messages followed one after another, choosing a dress, scheduling, image strategy. Not a single question asking if I wanted them to appear. Not an apology. Not a private conversation. They weren't trying to mend things. They were planning. "This is the ritual," Daniel said, his voice strained. "Walk in, smile, take a picture, control the narrative." I read it again more slowly, and then I understood. This wasn't a mother missing her daughter. This was an opportunity to reclaim the image, an opportunity to stand beside me in the moment of victory, an opportunity to pretend they'd always been there. "They don't want you," I said. "They want a version of you they can show off." Daniel nodded. "So what are you going to do?" I looked at the screenshot one last time. The cold arrangement. No regrets. "I'll let them come," I said, quietly. That night, we sat around the kitchen table. "Daniel, Rachel video called, like people planning a campaign. You can cancel the invitation," Rachel said. "Call security, get them out." "Great," I replied. "And tomorrow's story will be the ungrateful daughter who forbade her own mother from attending the awards ceremony." I shook my head. No, I let them come. No warning. No confrontation. Just a deep breath. And as I stood on the stage before hundreds of educators, before the television cameras, I said, "I want to thank my family." Rachel was speechless on the screen. "I want to thank my family," I repeated. "My husband, Daniel, who believed in me when no one else did. My daughter, Maya, who taught me what unconditional love is." I paused, and that was it. No other name. No additions. Silence spoke volumes. "Will they try to go on stage?" Rachel asked. I smiled. My first real smile in days. "If they do," I said, "I'll just remind them that I'm respecting the boundaries they've set." 3 days before the ceremony, Dr. Eleanor Hart called me. "Elena," she said, "we need to talk." Her voice was serious, a voice I'd known since my first day teaching. Something just happened. And at that moment, I understood. It wasn't over yet. "It's me." "What is it?" Dr. Eleanor Hart's voice on the other end of the line lowered. "Last week, someone contacted the organizing committee," she said. "A woman named Evelyn Whitmore. She said, she's your mother." I gripped the phone tightly. Eleanor paused, as if weighing her words. "She requested to speak in the family talk section. She said she wanted to say a few words about parenting." I felt a chill run down my spine. What did she do?" "The organizing committee forwarded the request to me because I introduced you. Eleanor said. They asked if I agreed. Another silence. This one heavier than all the previous silences. Elena, Eleanor continued, her voice soft but firm. I don't know your family story. You've never told it. I've never asked, but I understand you. I've been watching you for 15 years. If you wanted your mother to be there that day, you would have mentioned her long ago. I exhaled slowly, as if I had just escaped an invisible grip. Thank you, Dr. Hart. Tomorrow, I'll introduce you to the stage, Eleanor said. I'll talk about what you've done, your achievements, your dedication, the years you've changed children's lives. Not your last name, not the parent she's describing. Just what you've built with your own hands. Her voice warmed. You deserve it. Then she said something that left me speechless. No one is allowed to write that story except you. I hung up, and I saw Daniel standing in the doorway, looking at me. Your mother tried to climb onto the stage, he said, and Eleanor stopped her. He shook his head slowly, not out of surprise, but because it confirmed once again the nature of the woman who had once called me her daughter. She thought she could leave, and then come back as if nothing happened, Daniel said. She thought she deserved it, I replied. That's the difference between them and me. The night before the ceremony, I sat at the kitchen table with a blank notebook, a cup of chamomile tea, and the weight of years pressing down on my chest. Maya had long since fallen asleep. Before closing her bedroom door, she still turned back to wave. Good luck tomorrow, Mom. You'll do very well. Daniel was in the living room. He left me in silence, the kind of silence only someone who truly understands you would dare to leave. I looked at the blank page. Who should I thank? My colleagues, of course. Dr. Hart. Those who put their faith in me. The students who made every early morning and every late night worthwhile. And then, I think of my mother, the one who used to host lavish brunches, laughing and telling her friends that I was changing other people's lives somewhere far away, while in reality, she was erasing me from family photos like wiping a stain off a shirt. I pictured her getting dressed right now, practicing her proud motherly smile, rehearsing the speech she believed she would eventually deliver in front of the cameras. I bent down and began to write. I want to thank my family, the family I chose and the family that chose me. My husband, Daniel, who saw me even when I was invisible. My daughter, Maya, who taught me that love isn't something to fight for. It's something to give, generously, every day. I put pen to paper. That was enough. No mention of the Whitmores. No thank you. No corrections. Just the truth. The family in my speech was the family that was actually there. Finished? Daniel asked from the doorway. Finished, I said. Tomorrow, for the first time in years, I will let my silence speak. The next morning, the building where the awards ceremony was taking place looked surreal. White columns, arches, long corridors, like a stage set up for someone to step onto and belong to. I walked in my navy blue dress. Daniel put his arm around me. Maya held my hand. I felt like I was stepping into a moment I had been deprived of my entire life, and now I was reclaiming it with my own hands. Inside, hundreds of chairs were lined up neatly. Teachers, principals, board members, district superintendents, media representatives, several groups of reporters, and a live broadcast crew. I went through the formalities and received my badge. A volunteer staff member smiled brightly. Congratulations. Your family must be very proud. Proud, I replied, smiling back. Yes, they're very proud. We sat in the front row, the area reserved for the honored guests and close family. Maya sat between Daniel and me, her feet dangling because they weren't touching the floor. She tugged at my sleeve and whispered, Mommy, is your name up there? I looked up. A large banner stretched across the stage. My name was printed in large, clear letters, impossible to ignore. Yes, darling, I gently squeezed her hand. That's my name. At that moment, I felt a gaze piercing through my back, a chilling, almost inescapable feeling of being watched. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I knew who it was. They were sitting in the second row, uninvited. But without hesitation, I heard my mother's voice before I saw her. Excuse me, that's my daughter up there, the one being honored. I need to be seated in the family section. Her voice rang out, frighteningly familiar, the voice of someone giving orders to the waiter, the voice that silenced the entire table. I stared straight at the stage, just breathing. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw them approach like a delegation. My mother in a cream-colored suit, her pearl necklace a symbol of power. Cassandra in a vibrant red dress, the kind meant for the cameras. Julian and his wife followed, adjusting their posture as if they were stepping into a photograph. They slid into the second row of seats right behind us, and I heard my mother whisper to the woman beside her, "I'm Evelyn Whitmore, Elena's mother. I raised her from birth. Everything she has today is thanks to me." I heard Cassandra lean close enough for the scent of her perfume to reach me. "Elena, you look well." I didn't turn. A hand touched my shoulder. "Aren't you going to greet your family?" Julian's voice was calm, as if he had the right to. I turned my head slightly, not enough to face him, just enough to reply. "My family is sitting right here." Then I turned back, placing my hand on Maya's, and I waited to be called by name. Maya's small hand was warm in mine. Want to know what happened when I gave my speech? When my mother heard me thank everyone, except her. Believe me, you wouldn't guess her reaction. Dr. Eleanor Hart stepped onto the podium with her usual composure. She adjusted the microphone, scanned the room, and began to tell me about myself. No flowery language, just the truth. She spoke of a teacher who started in a small, resource-poor school, but was not lacking in willpower. Of children pulled out of the shadows by her daily presence. Of someone who taught full-time while studying for her master's degree at night, her mentoring program spreading throughout the state. And then Eleanor emphasized, softly but clearly enough for everyone in the room to hear. I want to make one thing clear. She wasn't born into privilege, no connections, no silver platter laid out before her. I felt my mother stir behind me, adjusting her pearl necklace, preparing her proud face for the cameras. Eleanor smiled and introduced, "Please welcome Teacher of the Year." I walked onto the stage. Hundreds of faces looked at me. Cameras captured every breath. In the back row, 4 people in designer clothes waited to be called as if it were their right. I thanked Eleanor. I thanked the Department of Education. I thanked the teachers who chose this profession not for money or fame, but because they believed in a child. Then I paused, choosing my words slowly. Teaching is not about proving anything to anyone, but about always being there for the children who need you, especially when no one else needs you. I thanked my colleagues. I thanked Eleanor. And then I turned to the front row, smiling at my family. Daniel, who believed in me when I no longer believed in myself. Maya, who taught me what unconditional love is. I paused. The list was finished. Right behind me, a chair was lifted. "Elena!" My mother's voice rang out, both hurt and commanding, the kind that made the whole room turn toward her reflexively. She stepped out into the aisle, her heels clicking on the stone floor, the cameras following her. "Have you forgotten your mother?" She began to ascend the stage steps, her forced smile still intact. "I just wanted to say a few words. I'm so proud." I looked her straight in the eye, calmly, coldly. "Thank you for coming," I said. "But the part about family in my speech is over." Her smile froze, just for a beat, a small crack. "I am your mother," I interrupted, still softly. 4 years ago, you wrote in the family group that you no longer considered me your daughter. You said I was a mediocre teacher and no longer belonged in this house. The entire auditorium held its breath. There was the sound of paper falling. "I am simply respecting that choice," I continued. "My family today is made up of those who stayed, those who didn't demand that I prove my worth with a title or salary." A security officer approached. My mother stood motionless, neither moving forward nor backward. For the first time in her life, she was speechless. And then, from the middle of the auditorium, an older woman stood up. A simple woolen coat, old glasses, hands that had touched thousands of classrooms. She clapped, slowly, decisively. Another person stood up, then 5, then 20. The applause rose in a wave, filling the entire hall. The applause was like a wave. 500 people gave me something my mother had never given me: unconditional recognition. From the stage, I watched security escort Evelyn Whitmore back to her seat. She walked stiffly, like a machine that had just lost its power. Cassandra took her hand, whispering urgently, but Evelyn brushed it away. Whispers spread like wildfire. She disowned her own daughter just because she's a teacher. She called her mediocre herself. Each whisper was a cut into the reputation she had painstakingly built her whole life. When the hall quieted down, I saw them. Evelyn sat stiffly, her eyes fixed. Cassandra frantically tapped on her phone. Julian clenched his jaw. And in the front row, Maya looked at me brightly. "You did it, Mom." After the ceremony, having just finished taking photos with the governor, I saw them approach. Evelyn between her two children, walking straight as if I owed them an explanation. "Elena," my mother said, her voice low, devoid of any theatricality, "we need to talk privately." I maintained my professional tone. "If you have something to say, you can say it here." Her eyes darted around. The other honorees, a journalist taking notes. "You humiliated me on television." I pulled out my phone, opening the screenshot that had been on it for 4 years. I held it up. "This is the message you wrote," I said. "You said you no longer considered me your daughter. So today, I'm only doing one thing, respecting that decision." My mother's face turned pale. I was upset at the time. Everything was taken out of context. I pointed to the timestamp, the sender's name, Cassandra's reply icon, Julian's understood. "There's no other context. This is a message to the whole family to pretend I don't exist." Julian interjected, his voice a lawyer's rational tone. "Elena, calm down." I looked him straight in the eye. I've been calm for 30 years. Calm when I'm pushed to the corner table. Calm when graduation day is forgotten. Calm when my profession is considered a stain. Cassandra exploded. "That's ridiculous. We came to show our support." "No," I replied. "You came to take pictures." I read the group chat message. "Should we bring flowers? That's acting." Julian's voice lowered. "Think of it from a PR perspective. The video is going viral. Everyone's calling her Mom." "I dropped that surname a long time ago," I said, raising my hand with my simple wedding ring. "A surname only matters when the family behind it is real." Cassandra whispered venomously, "You think you're better than us?" I shook my head. "I'm still me, a teacher. The only difference is I no longer ask your permission to be loved." Just then, Daniel approached. Maya took my hand. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "More than ready." I looked at my mother one last time. The dress, the pearl necklace, the fancy bag, suddenly seemed out of place, like a polished surface whose cracks had been exposed by a spotlight. I spoke softly enough for only her to hear. "4 years ago, you chose your image over your daughter. I once thought I would hate you, but hate would mean you still had power, and you don't." I didn't apologize. I didn't ask for an apology. What I learned is, forgiveness isn't the same as turning yourself into a rug. I chose self-respect. I nodded once, as if closing a chapter. "I hope you find what you're looking for, but you won't find it in me." We left without looking back. The consequences didn't explode immediately. They seeped in, like water seeping through a crack in the floor. Weeks later, Rachel called. My mother had withdrawn from the social committee at the club. Cassandra had deleted a series of family posts. Julian was completely silent. No one publicly boycotted them, but there were different glances, small distances appearing in places where they had once been welcomed. Rachel whispered, "Your mother went to see the therapist to understand what happened." I set my coffee cup down. Good for her. I looked out the window, where the oak tree behind the house stood still as a witness. Her change, if any, didn't erase what had happened, and it didn't create an obligation for me to go back. 6 months later, I understood what true peace was. It wasn't silence. My house was never silent. Maya practiced piano, Daniel trudged through the muddy backyard, and I found myself breathing a sigh of relief, like the first time I lived in a place where I didn't need to ask permission to belong. Daniel still argues with the tractor in the shed as if it understands his lectures on fuel efficiency. The chickens have their own opinions on everything, but beneath the noise lies a different kind of stillness, a stillness that only appears when you know exactly where you belong. I'm still the superintendent of the school district. The work is rock heavy. Budget, personnel, paperwork, responsibility for an entire school system. But every morning when I walk into the office, I see the picture Maya drew. 3 stick figures under the golden sun: mother, father, and child. It reminds me that success isn't something to show off, but something to cherish. For our 3rd wedding anniversary, we spread out a picnic blanket under the oak tree behind the house. The sunset cast a golden glow on everything. Daniel handed me a glass of lemonade and said casually, "A publisher called last week. They want you to write a book about your journey." I shook my head immediately. I didn't want to relive the past. But then I thought, if I'm going to tell, it has to be on my own terms. No revenge, no selling the pain, just so someone who's been looked down upon knows they're not alone. Maya snuggled into my lap, the scent of grass and sunshine. "Tell me, Mom." I kissed her hair. "Once upon a time, there was a teacher who found her family. Then a letter arrived, a year after the ceremony. The envelope had no sender's address, only my handwritten name. I recognized the handwriting immediately, the careful, curved strokes my mother used to be so proud of. I sat there for a long time holding the envelope. Daniel came in, saw it, and sat opposite me. He said nothing. "You don't need to open it," he whispered. "I know," I replied, but I opened it. 2 cream-colored pages with gold embossed lettering, the kind people use to save face. The contents were concise, without blame. It was just a stark admission. "Elena, I've written this letter so many times. Each time I tried to explain, but the truth was simpler. I was afraid. I was afraid of what others would think, afraid of being judged, afraid your choices would expose my shortcomings. I don't expect your forgiveness. You owe me nothing. But I want you to know I was wrong, and I'm sorry." I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and put it in the drawer. "What are you going to do?" Daniel asked. "I don't know," I said, looking out at the oak tree by the window, its leaves turning amber. For the first time, I realized I didn't need to know right away. What kept me awake for months wasn't anger or sadness. It was the question, why would a mother erase her own child? I'd read, asked, talked to a friend who did therapy, not to justify myself, but to stop carrying the burden of confusion. And I understood one thing. My mother grew up in a family where love was a transaction. Praise for success, cold indifference for failure. She learned to believe that a person's worth was measured by achievement. When her ideal children succeeded, she felt secure. But I, who chose meaning over money, made her feel threatened. Every question about me required an explanation, and that explanation brought her shame. So she did what fearful people do. She cut off the part that hurt her. That's indefensible. But understanding it helped me realize that rejection said nothing about my worth. It only spoke of her wound. And here's what I want you to hear. If you've ever been in my position, you're not responsible for healing the person who hurt you. You can understand them without excuses. You can have compassion without giving them control over your life. Boundaries aren't walls built of anger. They're doors, and you hold the key. If you're listening, perhaps you've also had to remain silent to maintain peace, wondered if choosing yourself made you selfish. This channel exists for those moments where you need to be reminded that your feelings are valid. If you want to continue listening to stories like this, subscribe to the channel. Not to follow me, but to accompany yourself. If this story resonates with you, have you ever had to choose between maintaining peace and maintaining your own peace? Please leave your answers in the comments. I read every line. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening.